and welcome to the Building Sociology Poddy, where we talk about better buildings to live and breathe in. Today, I'm joined by Matt Reisinger, one of the most recognisable names in high-performance building. Matt is the founder and CEO of Reisinger Build and the force behind the Build Show Network, where he's built a global audience by sharing building science, craftsmanship, and the lessons he's learned in the field. Known for his openness about mistakes, his curiosity about products and methods, and his ability to make complex topics engaging, Matt has become a reference point for builders around the world. Recently, he spent some time in Australia, connecting with our builders, seeing our products and practices firsthand. And I have invited Matt here to chat about all of this and more. So welcome to the show, Matt.
Wow, Jess, what a nice intro. Thank you so much. I'm gonna steal some of those lines. That was great.
I try to get my intros right.
Oh, that was really good. Yeah, very kind. I love it.
Thank you very much. Awesome. So I'm looking forward to this chat. So you have built your entire platform on transparency and education. And in Australia, you were here. You were here for 2 weeks in Brisbane for the Level Up.
Sydney as well. But yeah.
I went to Sydney. Yep. How did you find that? And what were the lessons that you took away from that visit here in Australia around, well, in general, really, but also around communication and around how builders do or don't get that right with each other or with the industry?
Oof. That's like 4 questions in one. Where do I start?
Sorry.
Let me start by saying
come at you fast.
That Australians are like Texans. They're very, very kind. They're very smart. They're good communicators. They're also very handsome and beautiful. This is the thing. Americans know that Australian actors are usually the best looking actors on the screen.
We'll take that.
But you're also very kind. And so I came for a conference is what I came for. I don't know if you know Dwayne. Why am I
Dwayne Pierce?
On his name? Yeah, Dwayne Pierce with the
Yep.
Level Up conference. That's his podcast too.
Yep.
Terrific builder, super good guy. I met like a couple dozen like-minded builders to Dwayne that were carbon copies of him, super kind, building
Super
great
Aussie
projects, really care about craftsmanship.
Yep.
I'm a little bit slightly regretful of a video that I made though, where I poked some holes in Australian construction, and I got to say that that's only a subset of Australian builders that are building like that.
It certainly is, and we will get to that video. I've got a question about that video. Of course I do.
Okay, there's plenty of builders in America who are not building great houses as well. And you kind of said it in the beginning. I try to be really open with my mistakes. I've made plenty over the years. So I think what's interesting about building science is that it's a lifetime of learning, and you can always build a little better than the last time. And luckily, there's lots of great resources for people out there, like your podcast and like plenty of other things out there to learn how to build better. And so, to kind of wrap your question back on communication, I think that Australian builders are really seeming to really dig into building science and learn to be educated. At my conference last year, we had about a half dozen builders that came from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really fun to see your community, just like my community, really digging deep and realizing, hey, we can probably build a better house. Let me learn how to do that.
Yeah. I think Dwayne got about 800 people at that event last year, which it was huge. It was. I said to him, it was a bit like a festival, because we have conferences here in Australia, mostly targeted at the professional industry, engineers, consultants, and they get, a couple of 100, 300 people. And there's not a lot for builders here. And to see that many builders rock up in Brisbane it's like, this industry is screaming out for more information on the actual, the trade side of it. So yeah, it was great to see. So, that's nice. Your feedback is that we're all kind and good looking. I like that.
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary, I would say.
This high performance word many builders struggle with translating that into everyday decisions. I don't know if it's the same over in the US, but here in Australia, particularly when you're on the beginning of any journey, really, working out how to turn the knowledge into practicality, and without being fearful of stuffing it up or creating more problems, is quite strong. So what do you think is one building science principle that every builder should start with, regardless of their budget or experience?
Jess, I think the number one principle that builders and anyone who's related to the project needs to think about is water.
Mm-hmm.
Water is the number one enemy to durability. And when we don't manage water very well, we end up with rot, we end up with mold, we end up with lawsuits, we end up with buildings that have problems.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be experts in water. And I would start with bulk water, whether that's the water that comes from the sky on a rainstorm, or whether that's the water that maybe comes from the ground from an in-ground foundation or a stormwater management issue. If we deal with water first, that's going to deal with 80% of the lawsuits out there, frankly. That's 80% of the reason, at least in the US, builders get sued is
Yep.
water.
Yep.
Once we deal with water, then we can get to all these other things that are important as well. But water is really the number one thing. So if we're going to get good at one thing, it's going to be making sure that our houses are dry.
Yep.
And the
Yep.
analogy I like to use, and that you've probably heard me use, and I bet your listeners have heard me talk about, is how, in America in the old days, every building had an overhang, had a ball cap on the building, right? If
Mm-hmm.
I wear this ball cap out into the rain, my nose is going to stay pretty dry. Now, the rest of my body might get wet, but my nose is going to stay dry. Now, if I take this ball cap and turn it backwards, what's going to happen?
Your nose is
My
going to
whole
get
face
wet.
is going to get wet, right?
Yeah.
And so as we've built more and more modern buildings with less overhangs, with parapet walls, we've forgotten how to build things that are really waterproof because we didn't have to for many decades. Our houses for years had overhangs. And in America, it was pretty common for older houses to have 2 and 3 foot overhangs. If you go over to Europe, in a lot of places, like I visited Switzerland not long ago, a lot of those old buildings had 6 foot overhangs.
Wow.
They didn't have fancy materials. So if you've got a golf umbrella up, a real big umbrella over top of you, does it really matter if you're wearing a cheap raincoat? You've got a golf umbrella up. You could wear
Mm.
your grandpa's old raincoat that's kind of open at the top. It doesn't matter because you got a golf umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
But in a modern build, where either you have not a either just a real small umbrella or maybe just a ball cap, how do you stay dry? You're gonna have a Patagonia jacket with a hood, and when you
Mm-hmm.
zip your hood up, that hood and that jacket better be perfect. You better
Mm-hmm.
not have any rips or tears in that jacket, because now all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden we're exposed for the life of the building. And
Mm-hmm.
now any wind driven water might still hit me in the face, even though I've got a ball cap on, because
Mm-hmm.
I've got this really tight shell around me. So in modern buildings, modern construction, it's really all about water. If we can manage that water well, we're going to manage 80% plus of our problems, kind of that
Mm-hmm.
Pareto principle.
Mm-hmm.
80% of the time it's water. So if we can manage that, then we can move on to the 20%.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just comes from so many places. Like water comes from moisture, vapor, bulk water. There's so many different places it can come from.
Yeah,
And you got to be ready. You got to be ready for all of them. So,
that's right.
So that's more of a design principle as well, rather than we call them eaves in Australia rather than overhangs.
Yep.
But that's a
Eaves, there you
design.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. I did an online course with Joe Seabrick earlier in the year, and it was a full-time job.
Awesome.
I actually had him on the podcast. You should go back and listen to episode 5.
Oh, I need to go back and listen to that. That's great. One of my heroes.
Yeah. He's actually coming to Australia next year too, which we're all pretty excited about. So what was I going to say? Yeah. So that is more of a design. The eaves, they're more of a design inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have one for builders? So, something that they should pay attention to.
Well,
on
I
site.
think that still goes back to builders though, because a lot of times
Yeah.
builders don't have anything to do with the design, but we
Yeah.
have everything to do with the build.
Yeah.
And one of the problems that builders have is that we want to do the job. We are incentivized to build the project, right? We don't make any money unless we build something. And oftentimes we get clients who are like, "Gosh, this is really expensive. We either need to bring the budget down 10%, or I'm going to have to find another builder." And we're like,
Mm,
"Oh no, don't do
mm,
that. We'll figure
mm,
out a cheaper window system. We'll use a less expensive house wrap or WRB, or maybe I'll find someone else to bid this section of the house." And this expression in America is we cut ourselves off at the knees,
mhm,
meaning, we under budget for things that are really important. They have to have the Sub Zero and the marble countertops. We can't budget that out, but we can budget out as a really good house wrap or sill pans for the windows or a good tradesman or woman to install them correctly. So I think
mhm,
that's the other thing that we need to be really cautious about is, okay, we can build a waterproof modern house, but we need to have the right resources. We need to have the right materials. And maybe we might even need an extra person to help us. Like in America, it's becoming more and more common to see an envelope engineer help us with those details. Like if I get a fancy house that has no overhangs, but not a lot of details for how to install those windows without leaking,
mm,
then I'll say to the client early on or to the architect, "Hey, I really think we should get an envelope engineer. Let's
mm.
call WJE and have them give us some details for how to do this correctly."
Yep, yep.
And sometimes builders think, "Oh, I can do that myself," but in reality, we need help with that sometimes, a lot of the time.
Mm,
So that's
mm,
another thing that builders can say is, "Hey, I definitely am excited about building this detail, this, whatever modern structure or the whatever we're doing that's very that has a lack of forgiveness. But let's get some outside help on this, and then let's also get them to come out when I've done it, inspect it before we cover it up, so that I have
yep.
somebody else who can say, yeah, we did that correctly. We can move on. Maybe we do a spray rack test. Maybe we just stand out there with a hose and
Mhm.
double check from a hose that it's watertight. But we need to do some additional things besides just showing up to the job and saying, all right, what are we doing today?
Yep. So you're saying rather than an actual detail on the build, you're saying that builders should ask for help more and look outside more and, look for more resources and think outside the square of what they would normally do.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good advice. Good advice, Matt.
Yeah.
Speaking of durability, your most recent podcast episode, you talked about durability and serviceability, and you were talking about how houses last hundreds of years.
Hmm.
So, how do we design and build houses that last hundreds of years? Because at the moment, we're pushing 20, if we at best.
Let me go back to somebody you mentioned, this guy, Joe Stieberich, who is kind
Yep.
of the godfather of building science in America. He wrote an article years ago on his website, buildingscience.com, called The Perfect Wall. And in the article, he said, this is how you could build a house that would last 500 years. And I've kind of taken the word perfect wall and coined the phrase monopoly framing.
Hmm.
So we've taken Joe's principles and brought it into a way that I like to call monopoly framing, which really is a way that you could build a house that could, according to Joe Stiebrick, the foremost expert in America, as long as you put a good foundation on the house, if you build it with the perfect wall, that house could last 500 years.
Hmm.
The idea being, if my desk in my office here is wood, or here's a wood wall right here, how long will that wood wall last in my office as long as it's kept dry and it's in this air conditioned space? Pretty long time.
Mm.
We could get a table from the Ming Dynasty in China that might be 1,000 years old, and it's a wood table.
Hmm.
Why did that wood table last? Because it was kept inside. It was kept at the same temperature and humidity that you and I like. 50% humidity and 70 degrees Fahrenheit, or what is that, 30 Celsius, something like
It's
that? No, not
70.
even,
70 is
less than that.
like, yeah, less than that, mid 20 somewhere, I think.
25 Celsius,
About that.
22 Celsius.
Yeah.
So that dining room table, as long as it's kept inside in those good conditions, wood can last a long, long time. So in this article, Joe Stiebrick says, well, the perfect way to build a house, if you're going to build a wood house, is to put all the control layers on the outside of the wood and let the wood be the same temperature and humidity as the rest of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So if we build a house that's very waterproof and very airtight, that maybe has a vapor barrier or maybe a vapor retarder on the outside, and then we put most of the insulation or all the insulation outside of that, well, now we've got a wall that could last 500 years.
Mm-hmm. See, I never
So
thought
it's,
about the. Sorry, Matt.
go ahead, Jess. No, you're
I
good.
was just
What
going
were
to
you
say,
going
I
to say?
never thought about the perfect wall as a durability detail. I more thought of it as an energy efficient detail. And also, I suppose all the control layers being on the outside keeps water on the outside as well. But I always thought about it more in terms of thermal bridging and keeping that frame warm rather than keeping it, of course, dry,
Yeah.
which is,
Yeah. It, it's really the dryness that matters. And
it
remember that
is. Yeah.
airflow can move water too.
Mm-hmm.
So, bulk water is our number one concern. And then depending on your climate in Australia, there's lots of places in Australia that are very temperate.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also some not so temperate places as well, where there's times of the year where it's very hot and humid, other times where it's very cold. So if we've got air leaking through our buildings, that air can bring a lot of moisture movement with it as well. So by building the perfect wall, putting the waterproofing on the outside and the airproofing on the outside, the air
Yep.
barrier layer, now we can build a wall that's very, well, from a water perspective, very, very tight, which
Mm-hmm.
leads to a very durable and a very healthy inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anytime we've got a mold investigation, it's really a water investigation
Yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah.
Mold's not going to grow on my paper notes here from my meeting earlier today, unless I leave it outside and then
Mm.
maybe put it in a Ziploc bag later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
otherwise, this is just wood. This is paper. That's just broken down wood.
Mm-hmm.
And we know the more the broken down the wood is, the more chance that mold's going to grow. You're going to see more mold growth typically on the back of sheetrock because it's paper, let's say, than you are on the 2x4s or on maybe these hardwoods on the wall over here.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can control moisture and we can control air, we've gotten 98, 99% there when it comes to really, really durable. And then
Yeah.
there's some other things you can do. Like Brent Hull and I were in that podcast, we're talking about alternate building systems. Like he's, for any of your podcast followers that are coming to my Build Show Live conference in 3
Mm-hmm.
weeks, Brent is showing a house on the VIP tour that's triple wide masonry, which is a fancy term for basically it's a full brick house. It's 3 courses of wide brick with plaster on the inside and with brick showing on the outside.
Yeah.
Well, if water leaks into that assembly, what's going to happen? Not
Wait, 3
much.
courses of brick? 3,
Yeah,
you
I
said?
think 3 courses. That's right. So it's a
Wow.
solid masonry house like we build in America all the time 150 years ago. We don't build them
Yeah.
that way anymore very often. But
We
this
have
house is
double
100
brick.
years old.
We have
There you go. You have
double
double
brick
wide.
houses in Australia
There you
with a
go.
vented, like a
Yeah.
cavity in the middle that breathes.
Fabulous.
Or that ventilates.
Yeah.
That's being phased out though because it's not super energy efficient. People keep trying to insulate double brick, and it gets complicated with managing the bricks getting dry, the bricks
Mhm.
drying, and all that sort of thing. But we have a
Yep.
lot of our older
Yep.
places are all solid block work or brick, and over in Western Australia, that's still their preferred method of building, double brick.
Interesting.
So
Very
yeah, it
cool.
is interesting that they've still hung on to that all these years when the rest of the country is building primarily with timber.
Yeah,
But
that's interesting.
three leaves of brick is interesting, very
Unusual.
interesting. Yeah,
Unusual. But think
but
about how
durable.
durable that is, Jess. I mean, you get
Mm.
water that leaks in from a window into a triple wide brick house.
Mm.
What's gonna, nothing to rot, really
Mm.
nothing to mold either. You don't see
Mm.
mold growth on concrete very often.
Mm.
Sometimes you see it on a sidewalk, maybe that's getting wet all the time.
Mm.
But
Mm.
your sidewalk out on the street that gets wet and then dries,
Mm.
no mold growth there.
Mm.
So it's a very durable way to build. It's also a very expensive and energy intensive way to build.
Yeah.
And just like you said, it's also hard to insulate correctly.
Yeah.
So we may
Yeah.
not meet modern comfort standards for a house like that.
Mm.
So that's why Joe Stiebrick's perfect wall makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. For sure. Yes, that was the point of the question, wasn't it? We
Yeah,
digress.
I'm bringing it back.
You often talk about the importance of learning from failure. Did you see any details or practices here in Australia that you think could lead to unintended consequences, whether that's moisture durability or occupant health?
Yeah, unfortunately I did, and I did a video on it, and I hope that I didn't. I saw that it made some headlines in
It
Australia.
did. It actually took a few months, but all the news outlets sort of picked this video up a couple of months, 3
I
months
saw that.
later, and
Yeah, I
it
saw
went
that.
bonkers.
I mean, my hope is that it would spur people on to build better. I hope that those
Mm,
builders. Hopefully, I didn't call out any specific builders. I did have one builder
no.
that toured me through who was very nice and
Mm,
seemed to build a better house than most. But the production builders that I was visiting, I tried to be very specific about not showing who they were.
mm-hmm,
But really, what I was seeing was houses that were doing some things just as dumb as we do in America. Don't get me wrong; this is not
mm,
specific to Australia, but ductwork in unconditioned spaces extremely dumb. We do that all
mm-hmm,
day long. I can go to a house 10 miles from here under construction that's doing that too. That's
mm-hmm.
really really dumb.
You
It's
mean
a
in the roof?
guaranteed to find mold. Uh,
Yep.
a slab on grade house that has the insulation on the flat and then ductwork that goes above the insulation outside of the
That's
conditioned space.
that's like 99.99999% of construction.
And that's really dumb.
Yeah.
It's extremely dumb. It
Yeah.
leads to a house that leaks air. It
Mm-hmm.
leads to a house that has mold issues. It leads to indoor air quality issues. We've got to bring our ducks in the conditioned space. And
Mm-hmm.
just like Australia does that, that's all over Texas as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the reasons why I make videos all the time. I probably talk about that on a monthly basis on my videos.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy that we still do it. It's just
Yep.
such a bad detail.
Yep.
The other thing that I saw was really a lack of care for both waterproofing and air sealing details,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's very common here in the States too. You know, if you go back and see my videos, there's houses in America that are being built with cardboard sheathing, which is just absolutely ridiculous. It's the worst possible
Cardboard.
sheathing in the world from a structural standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
and from a waterproofing and an airproofing standpoint, it's ridiculous that we're still
How,
doing that.
how is that even on the market?
It meets code, believe it or not. From a structural standpoint, you can put this structural cardboard on top of your timber framing, and it will resist enough racking strength to meet code, but it's just a really, really bad detail.
Well, we use things
And
like ply here for that.
which I love, that's great. And
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
makes it much easier than if you're going to put plywood up or some type of wood to go over that with, let's say, a peel and stick house wrap, which will
Yeah.
deal with air tightness and water really well.
Yeah.
So that's something that Australia can jump into, and I'm still helping America jump into that as well at the same time. As a side note, Jess, I've got a building standard coming out January 1. We're going to unveil it as the beta version at my show here in 3 weeks. But look for a brand new building standard called the Build HD standard
Okay.
that we're going to unveil January 1st. The HD stands for high durability.
Uh-huh.
You know, there's lots of good building standards out there. There's passive house, and there's pretty good house standards, and there's building codes in America. But those codes generally deal with life, safety, health, and energy efficiency.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily deal with durability. And when it comes to indoor air quality, when it comes to mold risk, when it comes to health concerns and longevity of the house, durability is key, and it all goes back to water.
Mm-hmm.
So in my standard that I'm unveiling, you'll see we have a heavy focus on making sure that you build a house that's not going to have water issues.
I often I say, you know, the beginning of my better building career started with energy efficiency, and it took me years to get to where I am now, where I think a lot of the industry is still stuck on making sure that the houses are energy efficient and their energy bills are low and their solar panels, and it takes time to get to the point where you're thinking about water and condensation and durability. What took me time anyway. But it is so much more important than energy efficiency. Making
So much more important.
a house that is healthy and durable is if you had to choose, you would have to pick that over energy, over your power bills. But it's
I'll
not a
pay a higher
focus.
power bill anytime for a house that's going to be healthy and durable.
Yeah,
Any day.
it's not the focus, and there's the unintended consequences of better energy efficiency that lead to lower durability that become problematic, and people don't know what they're really choosing. It's time for a quick sponsor shout out. Today's episode of the Building Sciology Potty is proudly brought to you by our amazing sponsors, Enduro Builders and Climasure. A huge thank you to these incredible businesses for supporting the podcast and helping us spread the word about better buildings to live and breathe in. Your support makes this podcast possible. Please head over to their websites and follow their social pages.
Exactly.
Many Australians think about better building, passive house, building science as a bit of a European import. As someone who has been to Australia and you live in the US and have probably traveled to many other countries in your career, and you've seen many building practices, what do you think we should keep from Europe, and what should we adapt differently for our climates? And because you've got in America, we've got 8 climate zones here, 8 building code climate zones, and you've got 8 in America as well.
Yeah,
sort
that's
of
right. Yeah,
similar. So you need varied codes for the varied climates as well.
Yep. Yeah.
What do you think that we should keep from the European standards?
That's such a good question. I love that question, Jess. I've been to Europe several times, and I've learned every time I've been there. I think let me start with a high level. I love the European mindset of I want to pass this house down to my grandchildren. I think that Europeans, because they live in such an old country and they're used to homes that are hundreds of years old as being a normal occurrence, they're used to building at a higher standard. It's also there's a little bit of a less focus on affordability, and this was a little tough to say. This may not make me a fan of everybody listening, but in America, we expect everyone to own a home someday, and ideally sooner rather than later. And as a result, we sometimes focus more on affordability than we do on durability, longevity, building good projects. I think in Europe, it's a little different, frankly. I think they expect if you're a young 30-year-old married couple that you're going to live in an apartment for some period of time. Maybe you won't ever live in a single family home. And that's a little bit different. It seems like in Australia and America, where we're like, oh, yeah, everyone should own a single family home. But in Europe, when they've got these really old projects, the mindset to me seems like, oh, yeah, I'm going to pass this property, this house down to my grandchildren. Why wouldn't I put copper gutters on or something that's going to last forever, basically? And so as a side note to that, when I went to the Bau show in Germany, this is maybe almost a decade ago now, I went through the roofing section, and the only roof materials that I saw that were available were roofs that I swear would last at least 50 to 100 years. It was clay tile. It was, metal of any sort, not a single asphalt shingle to be seen anywhere. And if you go to the American version of that show, whether it's the International Builder Show or maybe the Roof Expo, 90% of what you see is a different type of asphalt shingle, which, and with a good hailstorm, you can take a 40-year roof and 5 years after it's installed, it needs replaced.
Yeah, wow.
So there's a mindset around the Europeans that I really like, which is I'm going to pay for a better product.
Long-term
I'm a
thinking.
little older than you are, but like in the 80s, I remember a neighbor of mine bought a Mercedes Benz this is like 1985 when I was a teenager. That's how old I am. And they specifically bought it. I was born in the early 70s. But when they brought this Mercedes from Germany to where I grew up in the East Coast, I'd never seen a Mercedes before. And they bought it because it was like, oh, we're going to keep this car for a decade or more. And at the time, we were driving American cars that if your American car had 100,000 miles, it was garbage. Like you had to throw it away, basically. It was a rust bolt. It was rusty. It wasn't worth anything. It was shot. And this diesel Mercedes, like the neighbor had it for 200,000 or 300,000 miles. It blew our minds. Well, then the Japanese started doing this too. They, these Hondas that were built super well in the 80s, Toyotas, they started selling the heck out of these cars because they just were built better. They lasted longer. We haven't done that with houses. We still build houses in America and frankly, Australia in some respects like we did in the 1970s. They might
Uh-huh.
have nicer countertops and better appliances or nicer appliances, but you know what? They're really fundamentally built the same way as they were in the 1970s. And
Uh-huh.
we wouldn't accept a 1970s car today. Maybe for nostalgia reasons, we might want one, but I guarantee you my clients wouldn't like the air conditioning system. They wouldn't like the suspension. They wouldn't like the gas mileage. They wouldn't like any of these other things about this 70s car. It wouldn't be as safe as a new
Uh-huh.
car. So the car industry has every year innovated and built better and better cars for not that much more money than a car built 50 years ago in the scheme of things. But yet home builders are 30, 40 years behind easily. And
Uh-huh.
honestly, I think that's true in Australia as it is in America. And in Europe, they're not that way. They've innovated. They have really, part of it's because they've had crazy high utility bills. You know, a gallon of gas in Europe is what, $15 or something, and for me it's $3 in America. So they've had to
Wow.
do some of this, but this whole mindset of I'm gonna buy something and I want it to last. I really resonate with that, and I really
Uh-huh.
really like that. So when it comes to Europe, there's a couple products that I really like, including some of their focus on air tightness and
Uh-huh.
WRB, weather resistant barrier, waterproofing. Windows, they make some excellent glazings
Uh-huh.
out of Europe. Am I going to build a house just like I do in Europe, just like they do in Europe? No, not necessarily. But again, if I have this mindset like, hey, how could I get this house to last? How could I build it using the same basic things? Insulation in Europe's not that much different. Framing, maybe a little different, depending on where you are. There's some places in Germany where they still build full masonry construction with exterior insulation. But my point, Jess, is that they've got a great mindset for wanting to build things that are going to last and frankly being willing to pay for it.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I was in Italy and Ireland earlier in the year, and I don't think I saw a single timber frame building the entire time I was there. And there's
Crazy.
actually not that much construction going on in Ireland. I think it's pretty hard to sort of buy land over there. It's all family owned and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's passed down through generations, so it's not super easy to get land and build. But the projects I did see, I did see insulated concrete, so externally insulated concrete, which was very exciting for me because
Oh,
we
that's
don't get
cool.
we don't get much of that here in Australia.
Yeah, I bet not.
And I saw in Italy, one interesting thing that I saw in Italy was, we're talking earlier about eaves and overhangs and waterproofing and durability and flat roofs and all that sort of thing. Over in Italy, it was all flat roofs. Like there was just a sea of flat roofs everywhere I went. And I couldn't quite understand that. I mean, I think maybe they use the flat roofs as living space. Um, but I couldn't quite understand, given that we give flat roofs such a hard time here in Australia for being a really not durable detail. And there's no eaves
Yeah.
over there. It was
Yeah.
all is all I
Parapets.
but it yeah, but it works. It works.
Yeah. Were they
And
all masonry construction though too?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's part
It
of
was
it.
heavyweight.
That's all
Yeah.
masonry construction.
Y- Yeah. Yeah, it's just so
And
different and
also
I
there's frankly more durable flat roofs out there too. I mean, we tend to use really thin TPO in Texas anyways for
what's
flat
that?
roofs, which it's a type of flat roof membrane that really only lasts about 15 years before it needs replaced.
Mhm.
And there's a system out of Germany called Kemper,
Mhm.
which is what's used on like New York City plaza decks for waterproofing. That's 4 or 5 times more expensive, but will last 3 or 4 times longer
Mhm.
than a standard membrane. So there are better materials out there for flat roofs.
Mm.
It's just a matter of
Oh,
being willing to pay for them and research them.
we do them really poorly here. We have Colorbond sheeting, which is like a metal sheeting, which is very
Yep.
durable. It's extremely
Yep.
durable. But everything that goes underneath that is sort of poorly specified and assembled for the most part.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah. Next question. So your answer to that question is a mindset of
I,
durability.
I think that's right. Yeah. A
Yeah.
mindset for longevity and durability is really
Yeah.
pretty cool. But in terms of actual products, They're really on the forefront for a lot of WRB products, tapes and sealants. Um, my fresh air system at my personal house is from a Swiss company that's made in Switzerland, and they've
Yep.
got some of the world's finest fresh air systems. They've been building airtight for a lot longer than we have in America. So, I'm not in any way trying to disparage the passive house standard. I think there's lots of good things with it. But the standard that I'm coming out with goes beyond just energy efficiency. And in fact,
Yeah.
energy efficiency in my book is in some places it can be really important to prevent condensation, depending on which market you're in.
Hmm.
But in other places, just like you, I think you can focus on energy efficiency to your detriment.
Yeah.
Do I want to buy a really efficient house or do I want to buy a really healthy house?
Yeah.
And if I had to choose, I'm going to choose the healthy house, maybe even if my energy bills are higher, frankly,
Hmm.
because I want a
Hmm.
house that's really well built and really durable, but maybe not as efficient. And that's okay.
100%. I would agree with that. So, actually, yes, I didn't actually quite ask you about this durability standard. At the HD standard, have you got any information you can touch on about that?
Yeah, I mean, I
When it's
briefly
coming out
mentioned this.
and
It'll
mm,
be out January 1.
mm-hmm.
We're unveiling a beta version at the Build Show Live conference and soliciting some more feedback. We've been wrestling with some of the things like, hey, what do we do with this? For instance, it's a non-negotiable for me to have all your ducts in the air conditioned space, and it's a
Yeah.
non-negotiable to have sill pans under your windows and doors and sloped sills and uh, air sealing super important. But do you need a point 0.6 ACH 50 that Passive House requires? I'm not sure you do.
Mm-hmm.
And do you need all triple glazed windows and doors? If you're in Brisbane, you may
No.
not need a triple glazed window door. When I was in Brisbane, I saw a lot of jalousie windows, which were awesome. And if it's 55 out, I might want to just throw open my windows and doors, right?
Yeah.
Because
Mm-hmm.
that's or 55 Fahrenheit, sorry. if it's
Yeah, I
if
know.
it's
I'm mentally
if it's
calculating what that is.
25 or 20 out or 18
Yeah.
out
Yep.
Celsius, I
Yep.
may just want to open my windows and let that in, especially with low humidity.
Mm-hmm.
So air tightness maybe isn't quite as important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's really kind of balancing energy efficiency, and there is a certain amount of it that is absolutely important, and you only get one
Mm-hmm.
chance
Mm-hmm.
typically to put insulation in. You can't easily
Mm-hmm.
upgrade that later. But at the same time, I really want that waterproof house, that house that doesn't have any issues with water or moisture in the walls. And
Mm-hmm.
then we also really want fresh air too. We want to make sure that our houses are getting filtered fresh air into the house on a regular basis, so that we're
Mm-hmm.
not just relying on infiltration for fresh air. So
Mm-hmm.
it's those things that you'll see in my standard. If you pay attention to social media, you'll probably see a beta version link
Mm-hmm.
around Build Show Live that will go up.
Mm-hmm.
But starting January 1 on both the buildshow.com and our YouTube channel and some other places, you'll see us talking about it heavily.
All right. I'm looking forward to having a read of that. And that will be available internationally and it will be available to be adopted internationally.
Yeah, I mean, we're
Is
still trying to figure. We don't have a way to make money on it, so there's no
Yeah.
fees to us. We're doing it a little bit differently than the passive house people. No, again, no disrespect. I think they're awesome, but there's no fees to us. You can do the standard or not. It's totally up to you.
Okay. And it's a
But if you want,
self-certified standard.
it's a self-certified. As long as you
Yep.
get the third-party testing done,
Air
there is
tightness
some
testing.
engineering requirements. There's some
Yep.
air tightness testing. There's blower door
Okay.
testing, duct
Yep.
blaster, and there's some engineering verifications as well, because there's some
Okay.
durability things that we think are important that your engineer is going to need to certify as well from the
Uh-huh.
framing standpoint. I think it would be very applicable for Australia as well.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not quite as applicable in Germany if they're building with non-timber or alternate building systems. If you're building an ICF house, a lot of the things wouldn't necessarily apply. Now the mechanical systems would, the fresh air would, some of those things would apply. But we're trying to figure out how to do that, and that's honestly why I'm giving a copy out to all the Build Show Live attendees to say, how do we do this? Like, how do we self-certify this? What would be helpful for you
Mm-hmm.
uh, in this kind of high performance building world to say, hey, I build to this standard, and this is a really good standard, and here's why.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Very interesting and intriguing. Build shows coming up. You mentioned 16th to 18th of October. What have you got lined up?
Yes. Oh, it's going to be incredible. Last year we had 6 or 7 Australian builders that were there. So
Amazing.
we'll see if we
There's a
get
few diehards here. Real
for sure.
diehards.
We have some great folks that came. That was really, we actually had 7 countries and 47 states in America represented last year. It was really
Wow.
cool.
That's
Very, very
amazing.
fun.
How
Yeah.
many people do you get at your show?
We had 2,000 last year for our first one.
That's incredible.
We're hoping for
first one
2,200. We'll hope to jump up 10%. We'll see.
Yeah.
But
excellent.
We've got a ton of education lined up. We also have quite a bit of business education. That was one thing I loved about Dwayne's event, the Level Up conference he did. He had some great business, the business of building as well. So we've got some of that coming up. We also have a lot of networking. You know, I think that builders, architects, engineers, remodelers, for many years in the States anyways, we were kind of in a bubble. We didn't want to talk to our competitors. You know, before social media, we didn't see what other people doing on their job sites. And so, you know, we've met a lot of good people on Instagram. You know, I follow a bunch of Australian builders on Instagram, but until I went over to Australia, I didn't get to meet them face to face. And there's nothing like a face-to-face meeting with somebody that maybe you've even seen their projects before on social media, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I really am so glad to meet you. I really feel like we're brothers or sisters from another mother, because we're like-minded. And so there's some connections that we're really trying to foster at Build Show Live. And we also have 160 manufacturers signed up that have been on the Build Show over the various years with some of their best new products. And I think one cool thing about a trade show like ours, and there's others like this, is although ours in particular, we've told all the manufacturers, hey, bring your nerdy people. You know, I want your tech people there.
Yeah.
I want somebody who can really answer the question like, hey, if I use this product, what's the perm rating? Or what if I apply this fluid applied too thick? Will that take the perm rating down to half that? Do I run a risk of a condensation issue if I do this? Those are the kind of questions that I think are going to be asked at the booths. And then also, I think grabbing those cards, like I said on social media today, this guy, Nate, who's the head chemist at Sashco, is going to be there at the show, and he'll give you his cell number if you ask him for his card. I called him the other day. Hey, which product should I use on this? This is my scenario. I'm doing this, this, and this. He's like, oh, you should definitely do this, and here's why. I mean, I called him on his cell, and he answered. That's
quick
the kind
answers,
of stuff that I think you get at a show like ours that's different than a big nationwide show.
Yeah. No, amazing. That's going to be one epic trade show. 160 exhibitors is amazing.
It's a good size, but it's not too big, which is the good part about it.
Yeah. It's going to be very good. All right. So
maybe we can get you in the future, Jess.
Oh my God, I would love that.
That'd be awesome.
Don't joke with me.
If you can pay the flights, we'll give you some free tickets. I'm offering that right now.
Oh my God. Wicked. Thank you. Banking that.
All right. Sounds good.
I'll come back to you on that one. Thank you.
Sounds good.
All right. So let's talk about the video. We've alluded to the video. We've talked about the video that you made about after you came. I had a look at the comments on that video.
What were they? Tell me. I try not to read too many of them.
Yeah, there's 1,745 of them as of yesterday. And it's a mixed bag. Wow. It's a mixed bag of people saying, oh my God, Australia, we build terribly. And, you don't know what you're talking about. This climate doesn't need this and that. And steel is amazing. And thermal, the R0.2 thermal break is there to stop thermal transfer. And, it's a mixed bag of what you would normally get, what we get on a regular basis on the internets. But 280,000 views as well.
Yeah, that's great.
That's
good. It sounds like quite a bit of them in Australia is what it sounds like.
Yes. I'm from Brisbane, and this climate doesn't need blah blah blah. All the usual stuff.
It's hard to knock those people, right? Because we deal every day with the people who are like, oh, houses need to breathe. You're building these houses too tight.
Mm.
And to be honest, I think that's probably would have been me 15 or 20 years ago. I probably would have
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah.
It takes time to learn. Building science is not like watch a 90-second video and you're convinced
No.
that you need to do this or that. Like, I've changed my mind on things. I've experimented on my own house. I've gone to everything that I could ever consume that Joe Stiebrick was talking at in America.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I've bought every book of his or anything that's for sale on buildingscience.com.
Mm-hmm.
I'm constantly trying to make sure that I'm reading the latest from
I
some of
have
my
that book.
friends out there. It's
Yeah.
a great book, and there's some
Yeah.
great analogies in here that
Mm-hmm.
I'll use in the future
Mm-hmm. Just
when
for
I'm
the
talking
listener,
about this.
the book that Matt's got up is A House Needs to Breathe or Does It by Alison Bales. I'll put a link in the show notes for anyone who would like to purchase it, but it's a excellent, very well written, easy to read book about building science.
Yeah,
Proceed.
and so building science is not a once and done. It's not get a degree in this from this online source in 6 months and you're done. There's new products, there's new ways that you need to think about things, and especially when you're talking about something as different as an Australia that has 7 climate zones, or America, right? If I make a video about how I'm doing something in Texas, I need to be cautious that someone watching that in a real cold climate doesn't go, oh, what about, you didn't do this or that, or will that cause, this or that unintended consequence? Well,
Yeah.
it's hard to engage in a dialogue with somebody who is not in the industry, or
Yeah.
just doesn't have a good education
Yes.
in the topic of building science. And so
Yes.
as a side note, I don't know if you've seen this, but Jess, on our website, thebuildshow.com, we actually have now 3 modules called Build Science 101, 201, and 301. And it's our way to help educate the industry, starting at a very, like, 101 is filmed that like a high school student could watch it and understand what we're talking about. And then as we go down the line, we get progressively more into the details. We actually have already filmed 401, and it'll be out hopefully before the Christmas time holidays. And we did it in a way that we could make a quiz at the end of each 20-minute video, so we could say, hey, do you understand these concepts? Like, multiple choice, A, B, C, or D, what's correct?
Yeah.
And if you answer the quizzes correctly, you get a certificate at the end that says, hey, I passed Build Science 101, 201, 301. And I've never said this publicly before, but another thing we're looking to do starting in January is actually publish the people that have passed that. Because all the time I get questions like, hey, do you know a good builder in Tupelo, Mississippi? And I'm like, I mean, I don't know someone there. I'm so sorry. But now I could say, hey, I don't know a builder there, but you might look on our website. It's broken down by state or by county. And here's all the builders that have passed 101 through 301 Build Science.
Amazing.
That's
Amazing.
at least a good reference to say they're consuming Build Show content. Or maybe when our building standard comes out, we'll say, hey, here's builders that have signed on that say, hey, I can build to this standard. I can build your house that meets these standards.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm trying to figure that out.
Yeah, we're desperate for resources that
Indeed.
that easily compile all of the people that you need in one place. We have in Adelaide specifically, we have a book called the Green Book. There's an organization called the Adelaide Sustainable Building Network, and they've put together a green book, which is all the local architects and builders and consultants that that work in this space. But that's it's that those sorts of resources are hard to come by. So I'm sure a lot of people will find that very useful.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah,
we're figuring that out right now.
Yeah, awesome. You're doing a lot of great things, Matt. So what advice would you give to Australian builders and designers who are pushing ahead of that curve without much local support?
Oof. Gosh, that's a hard one, Jess. I mean, one good thing is that true wood houses, timber built houses, that is, they're actually pretty dang forgiving. Metal framed houses are less forgiving. So that's one reason why I at least in that video, was like, gosh, I'm a little worried about this. They're frankly just less forgiving. Wood as a building material is pretty incredible. I mean, God designed this tree that could suck up moisture 200 feet in the air and feed the entire tree, cut it down. And as long as it's in your living room and it's kept dry, it can last for almost forever. And it's pretty easy to work, and it's relatively lightweight compared to steel and some of these other building materials. And oh, by the way, it's carbon sequestering and all these other good things that happen with trees and trees that grow and that are cut down and regrown. But it generally is a pretty forgiving material. So as long as we're using wood as a baseline, frankly, we have a little bit of a leg up on some of these other building materials that are a little more exotic. Let's put it that way. Wood can be very forgiving. Wood can absorb moisture and let it go. As long as the drying rate is bigger than the absorption rate, we're going to be okay. So, if we build a wood frame house and we keep it dry to begin with, and we do a really good job on the WRB, this is kind of back to the beginning of the podcast where I said the number one thing we need to deal with is water. If we build a wood framed house and we keep the water off of it on the outside, we really focus on our WRB. We consider going to, let's say, a peel and stick WRB. We do pans for our windows and doors. We allow them to leak onto the WRB, but then move to the outside of the building. Beyond that, shockingly, that's 80% of the problems.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
As a side note, I thought it was, you may have I peeked at your questions ahead of time, so you may still be asking me this, but one detail I loved in Australia that I thought was fabulous that seemed to be in the Australian building code was that floor drains were required in bathrooms.
Yeah.
What a fabulous detail. What rains more than your shower in your house, right? No climate in Australia is any more rainy than any given master shower. That's dumping an inch a day or 2 inches a day of water onto the floor.
Yeah.
So to put a floor drain in, that's an incredible detail that's not done on all but the top 0.0001% of homes in America. So the fact that you guys have that as a standard feature, that's wonderful, and will prevent a lot of problems, and frankly, just a lot of plain old insurance problems. Most of the time when you have a flood, it's a super expensive insurance issue. But by putting a floor drain in, you could probably stop 80-90% of those floods from happening to begin with, because they go down the drain and they're never an issue. So you guys are pretty smart by putting that in your code. I would like to see that get adopted in America as well. That's actually in my Build HD standard.
Yeah, nice. That's cool. You're taking things from like your international experience as well. That's cool.
Yeah.
I think the thing that most builders are worried about in Australia when they progress to this level of building is condensation. So I think keeping bulk water out and all that sort of thing is really vital, really important. But it's not as scary as the unknown of condensation. So they're all worried about roof ventilation, and they're worried about trapping moisture inside walls and vapor drive, and they start freaking out about that sort of thing. So that's a huge motivation for me in what I do in my work is educating people on how to mitigate those risks so they're not so afraid to keep going, keep improving. Is that the same in America, the condensation fear?
Yeah, for sure. And it is a legitimate fear. But again, kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, have you heard the word the Pareto principle? If I say that, do you know what I'm talking about?
Pareto? Nope.
It's this old adage that 80% of the problems are caused by 20% of the issues.
Oh, yes.
So, if we focus on bulk water and then focus on air, we're going to get rid of most of the problems in our houses. And condensation can happen, don't get me wrong. But the amount of vapor failures I've seen in houses, I can count on less than one hand. And in fact, I asked Joe Stiebrick one time at dinner years ago, hey, Joe, what have you seen on vapor failures? And he said, Matt, I think he actually was the one who said this. I could count the vapor failures on one hand.
Okay.
But how many times have you seen, Matt, issues with water and air problems in houses causing that? Numerous. There's no way I could count. I can't tell you how many failures I've been involved with in buildings that were water or air related. So if we deal with water and air first, vapor is really far down on the list.
Okay. How do you separate the air and the vapor? Because vapor is in air. So how do you, in terms of air versus vapor failures, what would
Well,
you
if
be
we
looking at?
stop the air drive, then we're going to stop the vapor issues, right?
Yeah. Yes.
If we air seal the house properly,
Yes.
then we're going to stop 98% of the vapor issues.
Mhm. Mhm.
And an analogy that I've seen Joe use is he'll say on this sheet of interior drywall, what do you call it in Australia? Drywall,
Plasterboard.
sheetrock, plasterboard. On
Plus.
this sheet of
Yeah.
plasterboard, if I have a hole this big in that sheet of plasterboard, and there's air movement through that little hole, I can bring gallons of water or liters of water into the house on the airstream.
Mhm.
But when it comes to the amount of vapor drive through that plasterboard,
Yeah.
we're talking about this much water that could, a thimble full of water
Yeah.
that could diffuse through this
Actually get through.
material.
Yep.
It could actually get through. So when it comes to vapor drive, it's just such a small issue
Mhm.
compared to air movement and compared to bulk water
Mhm.
that it's
Mhm.
almost negligible.
So the two little I call them ditties that we repeat regularly, or I repeat regularly, is build tight, ventilate right. So that air
Yeah, I love
tightness
it.
layer, controlling the air tightness layer and ventilating it correctly. And cold spots equals mold spots.
Say
So
that again. Cold spots equals mold spots.
yeah.
I like it. I like that.
Yeah, so
That's
that
good. I've
alludes to
not heard
thermal
that before.
bridging. Yeah, thermal bridging and condensation. And I reckon if you
Mm-hmm.
sort out those two things, you're pretty well right. There's not a lot else that can really go wrong apart from bulk water. So it
Yeah, I would
real
tell you
tight.
on the cold spots equals mold spots. That's more of a deal in metal framing than it is in wood framing, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Or steel, like aluminium windows, steel frame, it's like steel portal frames, or steel, house framing, poor insulation install, particularly in bathrooms where it's high humidity,
Yep.
and those cold areas of the ceiling can attract moisture. And yeah, steel framing in Australia it was egged on by COVID, and supply issues with timber, but it is everywhere. It is everywhere here at the moment, and some people just love it.
Yeah, I caught that in the comments. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
can work. It just needs some other detailing than what I saw. Let's put it that way.
100%. And I've got a friend who lives in Ireland. The one I was over in Ireland to visit her earlier in the year, and she's looking at building a house over there with her husband. And she sent me a brochure recently from a company that builds steel framed homes. And I was like, red flag, red flag. Let me have a look at this before you do anything. And she sent me the brochure, and it was incredible. It was externally insulated steel. The assembly of the wall and the floor was incredible. And I was like,
Wow.
that's how you do steel
Cool.
properly. And it's
Yes. I love it.
wow. Yeah, I'll put a link to that brochure in the show notes for those who are interested in seeing steel done properly. But I was like, green tick, go for it if this is what you want. That's a durable frame that's going to be comfortable and well detailed.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah,
Pretty awesome.
I was impressed.
That's
Okay,
cool.
so last question, Matt. I ask all of my guests the same question because I'm trying to compile an amazing list of wisdom from my guests. What is the one thing you have learned in your career that you want the listener to know? If you had to pick one.
Oof. So one thing I've learned in my career that I would pass on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing I would say is never assume you know it all. Always have an open mind to be learning and being educated. I think that's one thing that's really helped me get to where I am today is by always saying, I'm willing to learn and be educated, and frankly, I'm willing to be proven wrong on
Mm-hmm.
on my past building practices and change what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and between that and always having the goal, my whole team has always had the goal of always building each house a little bit better than the last one.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we realize, hey, this could be a little better, I think that I think we really should be doing a better fresh air system for our houses. This basic system we've been doing, I don't think this is very good. We need to move to this system. We've done it. And then
Mm-hmm.
if we realize, oh, there actually is a better system than that, we
Mm-hmm.
should stop doing this and do this instead. We've done that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something that we've always done, is we've always kind of upped our own internal standards as a company.
Yep.
And said, hey, here's what we can do better. And then lastly, I would say share your failures among your team and among your company at a minimum. I tend to share my failures with the whole world. But there's a couple failures that I've only shared with my team. And I try to make sure that we have good institutional knowledge about dumb things that we've done, whether it's a particular manufacturer that I didn't think treated us well on service, or whether it was a detail that led to a failure. Make sure that when you make a mistake that you tell people about it, and you share that either with your community or at a minimum with your internal team.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes a really big difference, and make sure
Mm-hmm.
that you don't do dumb things over and over.
Yep.
So I answered
Excellent.
that with 4 things, Jess, rather than 1.
That's okay. That's all right. We'll take all the wisdom we can get. Thank you so much, Matt, for your time. This was a very interesting hour. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you, Jess. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to seeing you at a future Build Show Live. Take me up on that free ticket, all right?
All right. Oh, I will. I definitely will.
I'm pretty sure the flights are more expensive than the tickets, so you actually have to must do that on that.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Thank you, Matt. I look forward to it.
Thanks, my friend. Wish you the best. We'll see you later.
Bye. That is all for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. There'll be another episode in a fortnight, so if you would like to listen into the types of conversations that I have all the time, please subscribe on your chosen platform. Rate the show, leave a comment, whatever you like, share with your friends and family. I'd love for you to spread the word about the Building Sciology Potty. There's a link in the episode description where you can head to a landing page, and there are some show notes there with relevant links and a full transcript of the show as well, and also links to my socials. So if you're not already, I'd love for you to follow along there too, as I share lots of building science and building biology tips. There's also a contact page where you can send me an email or even a voice message. So if you've got questions or suggestions or guest ideas, I'd love to hear from you. I want to know what you want to know, so please get in touch with me. Thanks again. I'll be back in 2 weeks, so until then, happy healthy building.